So I thought about the talk today. I thought about like, what do I want to talk about? Do I want to give sort of a foundational, what is wellness? What are the different dimensions of it? Because it's so multifaceted. But I really got hung up on this question that I've heard so often, which is, Anthony, how do we invest in wellness to be prepared for the next crisis? And I sort of thought about that question, and there's so many kind of things to unpack with it, but ultimately what I really felt was at the core of that question was this reactive behavior, this kind of, hey, when wellness hits us, how do we invest in it? And so when I thought about radical empathy, and we're going to talk about it, radical empathy is all about being proactive, investing in wellness now, because crisis will come no matter what we do to try to prevent it. So that's going to be the basis of my talk today. Beautiful. So I'm also Academy Award snub in my mind. It's an amazing movie, but everyone is talking about employee wellness. It's the thing. It is the sort of the headline of today. It's the headline everywhere. Mental health. Companies investing so much more in mental health. You can kind of see some of the data underneath in terms of the companies that are going to invest more in this area of wellness: telehealth, stress management, family wellness, financial wellness. And these are just 5, but there is arguably 20, 30, 40, many dimensions of wellness and areas that companies can invest in. And so 2020, so much going on, so much happening in the world. We're going to invest and really double down on wellness. And this kind of summed up in this quote here: hey, 2020 was the ultimate business case for wellness. And my reaction was this: every time I read an article that says, COVID, the pandemic, everything that's happening in all parts of the globe, we have to really double down on wellness. All of these things that are happening in the world show us that we have really been lacking there. I just give the side eye. I just look and say, like, really? The signs weren't there for years. You didn't see that employees were articulating needs around wellness for 10, 20, 30 years. And that is, again, the kind of basis of the talk here, is how do we start to get proactive about our investments in culture so that when a crisis happens, and again, they will come, we're ready for them. So, I kind of talked about this just 20 seconds ago, but people talk about mental health and diversity and inclusion and the importance of maternity benefits and paternity benefits, gender empowerment, leaning into LGBTQIA, really thinking about exhaustion and burnout. And again, 2020 is sort of the kind of catalyst for it. And 2020 showed and really shined a light on the needs and areas to invest in a big way. But again, also showed that we weren't looking at the data. We weren't looking at what our employees were saying in a meaningful way, or not meaningful enough. And radical empathy, we'll get to it, but radical empathy is all about changing your mindset. Radical empathy is actually a state of mind. It's a practice. And it's a practice that helps you get more proactive about looking at data and sentiment of your employees, and then making the appropriate investments for the future. Even if those pain points from your employees feel like edge cases. The edge cases always have a knack of becoming mainstream in 5 to 10 years. And so this is just saying on the slide, look, we've seen data and events crisis for years. And I've just picked, 5, 6 or 7 of these things. There's so many more I could have put on the slide, but the data has been there. 2020, of course, it shined a light. There's so much we're sort of experiencing and dealing with as a country, or as a population, but the data has been there. And why have we missed it? And that's sort of the fundamental question. Why did we miss it? How did we miss it? And the answer to that is we missed it because we tend to be reactive when it comes to cultural transformation, employee wellness. And so it was there. Again, it was right in front of us, but we weren't really looking. And radical empathy is all about changing the mindset so that you're looking, and you're looking with nuance. So some not famous person, knock on wood, maybe becomes famous in the future. AC is Anthony Clay, that's me. Said that 2020 was not the ultimate business case for wellness. It was the ultimate business case for radical empathy. It's the ultimate business case for our cultures and our organizations to really rethink the approach to employee pain, employee sentiment, employee engagement, as Monica sort of talked about. All right, so what is this thing? You've said it a gazillion times. So what the heck is it? Always like to deconstruct the actual term. So on one hand, you have radical. And so what is radical? Radical is far-reaching, extreme. It's in a sort of an extreme point of view, an extreme kind of place. Empathy, ability to understand, share, lean into the feelings and lived experience of others. You combine these two, and you get that definition that's in the green, which is this idea that radical empathy is this never-ending practice. It's a never-ending journey, really, but a never-ending practice of intentionally, right? There has to be intentionality behind radical empathy. Proactively, we're not reacting. Our employees are burned out. They're exhausted. They need family benefits. They need financial literacy and financial wellness. Data shows that. It's been showing it for years. So proactively seeing those kinds of trends and doing something about it, going to the extreme to try to understand someone else's feelings and or lived experience. That's what radical empathy is all about. And why is it so important? It's because when you have this mindset and you have managers accountable to a radical empathy mindset, it becomes a cultural value of your company. It's a cultural value at Indie. What it leads you and what it allows you to really do is you start to spot cultural and wellness trends proactively. You see them. They're right there in front of you, and you actually go and take action on them. You're not waiting for something like 2020 to invest for the first time in cultural transformation. You do it early, and that last bit is so important. Radical empathy sort of demands that you think about trends and data and listening systems with real nuance. Not just at an aggregate level. 70% of my employees said blah, but unpack that 70%. Well, what about this demographic, that department? Nuance is such an important aspect of applying radical empathy to cultural transformation. So I'm going to show you sort of the money slide. This is where I'll kind of spend the most time. And I'm going fast. I like to talk fast. I'm energetic. I can't wait for the panel. We're going to really go even deeper on some of these. But so number one, so how do you apply radical empathy to the workplace? Like, got it. So we were sort of a little, not flat-footed, but we were a little bit more reactive than we could have been. There was all kinds of different dimensions of wellness that was in data, in world events for a really long time. You're telling me, Anthony, you're telling me that radical empathy is all about having more of a proactive mindset. It's about looking at things with nuance. But how do I actually take that and bring that back to my workplace today? And so the first thing is, and of course I will answer that question with, the first thing is continuous pulse. And I think we all can probably nodding our heads. This has been something that's been trending even in the employee engagement world for a while. But this idea that we're not doing the single survey a year, that just can't happen. By the time you collect all the data and analyze it, you are so lagging. You are so behind what your employees and your culture is asking for. You just can't really do anything that's going to be effective. And so one part of applying radical empathy, and one way to do it, is to evolve your listening system so that they are continuous. Monthly pulse surveys. Sometimes I've seen organizations go with bi-weekly, which I think is a little bit too much, but something like a monthly survey, a pulse survey, how are you doing? And through multiple types of listening systems. So surveys are fantastic, but I always say to organizations, do you have employee resource groups? Employee resource groups are an amazing way to get on the ground floor the nuanced perspective from your employees in a safe way, because you always have to discount survey data to some degree. Right? There's always a little bit of, I say something, but how do I actually feel and how do I act? There's always a little bit of a disconnect. And employee resource groups are an amazing way to really close that gap. But that's just one other type of listening system that augments surveys. But think about all the different types of ways in which you're listening to employees, and go invest in maybe 5 more ways to do it. Because it's so critical that you're getting a continuous pulse, and that you're getting different, or that you have different channels for feedback collection. That's super, super duper critical. Number 2, look at your data with demographic, departmental, and sort of level within your organization, nuance. This is so critical. One of the things that's happened in COVID is people who have done surveys and have done analyses on how are people feeling, is they report data in the aggregate. And what you see is, oh, okay, in some cases, in some sort of part of wellness and engagement, we're actually seeing that COVID has been positive. And you might say to yourself, oh, that just feels counterintuitive. Because when you actually take apart that a data point like 70%, and you take it apart and you look at women, women of color, you look at managers versus non-managers, you see vastly different things. So there's a classic study of organizations that were asked, hey, do you feel like you are thriving during the pandemic? How do you feel about your sort of state of mind? And how would you characterize what the pandemic has done for you, your career, and your wellness? And this survey, the overwhelming response is, oh, it's been really, really great. People are thriving. A couple of different analyst firms followed up on that survey, and they said, hey, look, let's actually cut that same data, or can we cut that same data by manager versus non-manager? And you can imagine the difference is just so stark. Managers indicate that they are thriving in the pandemic. Folks with no managerial or people authority are struggling big time. And so that kind of nuance helps you understand where your employees really are at. And so it's so important to deconstruct data and look at it with nuance. And if you heard me, if you saw me last week, I'm big on this idea of looking at data with real demographic, departmental nuance, because you see so much more. And wellness programs that are personalized are way more effective, but you can't get to that level of personalization without deconstructing, applying nuance to your data. So that's another way that radical empathy evolves your systems, is you start to look at things with a very different lens. You look at your data with a very different lens. Third one, workplace policy for the edge case. Do it right now. So the classic thing, you saw it even in COVID. This idea that, millennials and Gen Zers, they're talking about the sort of need for mental health benefits in order to stay at an organization, but our organization is only 10% millennial or Gen Z, 10 to 20%. So yeah, it's an important thing. We're hearing it from that cohort. We're hearing it from people are saying it. But it feels sort of like the edge case. I still have 80% of my organization to really think about. You fast forward, everyone is saying we need to have mental health benefits. We need to have stress management. We need to have mindfulness in our organization. And so it's the beauty. Product design is the same way in technology. Any kind of design is the same way, where designing for the edge case has massive benefits for everybody, for the mainstream part of the curve. And so that's really, really critical, is when you're looking at your data, when you have these continuous listening systems, and you're hearing your employees say X, Y, and Z, it's really important that you don't ignore the lowest ranking pain point or the lowest ranking need from your employees, because who knows what crisis comes. That's going to be the thing that everyone's asking for. And so designing wellness for the edge case has massive goodness and benefits and positive externalities for your mainstream parts of your organization. So that's really, really an important bit of applying radical empathy. You don't look at that lower ranking results in a survey. You don't look at that any differently. You still design your programs for those folks as well. Fourth one, second to last one, new scorecards. We need them. So radical empathy is all about disrupting how you think about, how you look at sort of systems today. When you have a radically empathetic lens, you will try and you will go to the extreme to think about nuance and the nuance of lived experience. And every individual is so unique. And so you could imagine that our old scorecards, those aren't going to be nuanced enough. The metrics that we talk about, we've talked about in the past, those aren't going to be nuanced enough either. And I love to always say, if you look at traditional, or if you approach problems that are very complex, that will be solved, you're kind of in a continuous rhythm. If you apply traditional approaches to those types of problems, you will get traditional outcomes. And so when we think about the types of new areas, but also some of the areas that we've looked at for forever in data when it comes to wellness, if you're looking at them, if you're measuring those things in the exact same way that you've always measured them, you're missing something. You really are missing something. And so you can see how these are kind of interconnected. You have nuanced listening systems. You look at data with a more nuanced lens. You think about the edge case, and that all should lead you to evolving your scorecard. and really thinking about sort of a nuanced scorecard. All right, number 5, integrate radical empathy into manager playbooks, manager competency. It is not enough to have high performing, contributing to the business, productive managers. That is just, I mean, it's never been enough, just to be clear. And we all, I think we all know that the number one thing or factor or sort of driver of keeping employees at an organization is the relationship with the manager, hands down. So managers now can't just be highly functional, highly productive individuals that drive business results. That's just not going to get it done. That is not going to get it done if you are thinking about wellness. And like Monica talked about, the cost of not investing in wellness. This is so urgent that your managers have a playbook, but also have accountability to embrace something like radical empathy, embrace a more human sort of centric approach to checking in with your people. And Monica had a lot of great examples of how you do that. Do you have managers? Do you require managers to do monthly wellness check-ins and they report back into a system? Technology tools can help think through how you apply accountability for managers at scale. But the point of number 5 is to say that we have to also evolve how we grade and how we measure the efficacy of our managers. Managers can't just be highly productive individuals. I know that's great for the business. It's hard to say, oh, that highly performing individual, got to move on from them because they're not embracing radical empathy. You got to. You either have to move on, you have to do something radical in your org structure. You have to really, really create organic and strong connections and strong expectations that radical empathy is what is needed, or else. And the boldness to say, hey, we'll move on from managers that are not embracing radical empathy. It's bold, it's extreme, but that's what radical empathy sort of demands. Beautiful. So got it. Okay, radical empathy. Anthony's talking about, we're not going to be reactive anymore. We're going to be proactive. We're going to embrace radical empathy. We're going to evolve our workplace systems, and what the result of doing so will look like. And we've seen it with a few organizations that we talked to, have talked about radical empathy with. Just way more prepared. You think about racial injustice, gender inequality, LGBTQ violence or violence on LGBTQIA folks. You think about everything that's going on with Asian Americans and violence against them. It's just really, really crisis just comes. It just is always there. It's just a kind of a constant of the workplace. And organizations that have invested in the systems that are all about nuance and all about proactively trying to get closer to employees, those organizations are ready as you can be for crisis. They're not caught off guard. They are not scrambling when the next thing comes. They have foundational values and beliefs that guide them through times of crisis. And that's what radical empathy really allows you to do, because you're already thinking about these types of nuances proactively. Beautiful. That's what I got. I'm very excited for the panel. I just wanted to really just sort of passionately articulate how important radical empathy is. It's disruptive, but it's so important for driving wellness in a very material way.